Well, hello there, everybody. I'm gonna give people like 1 or 2 minutes here. Try to get at least one other person in here, then we'll get started. But yeah, I'm gonna be trying some new things here in the future. But let me get my little cheat sheet out. Oh, we got 2 people. Yay! Okay. So, welcome everybody to the live stream, and going to do some general announcements here first. A couple things that's going to be going on here is for my videos, as time allows, I'm going to be probably dropping videos on Saturday and Sunday as of right now because the way I'm working is I leave in the dark, I come home in the dark, so I'm running out of light to shoot. So, and with that being said, what I'm going to do is I have a few series kind of going right now, so I'm going to start rotating those series. Like I did Solitude this past Sunday. So what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to pick up 1 or 2 more series, and I'm going to do videos on those um, this coming Saturday and Sunday. Um, there are a couple of one other thing I'm going to do is I may look into switching up how I do the live stream. I'm still going to be doing it at the same time, but I may be using a different system so I can share pictures and things like that because I would like to do that. It's just I never got around to doing it. I have 1 or 2 systems on here that I might be able to do that with. So basically, once I get that all nailed down in place and figure out how to use it, I'll probably go to that, but I'll still be having a live stream here. But I'll be able to throw pictures up. I can show you guys pictures, move my mouse around on the screen so you can see what I'm talking about in the picture. Uh, Possibly even show video. Not so sure about that yet, but at least I'm going to be able to do the picture thing so you all can see what I'm talking about. So I'm not doing this holding the book up to the screen like I was last week. So there's that. So there's a couple things going on here that I'm slowly but surely trying to ramp up and make this a lot more user friendly, or I'd say watcher friendly. So you guys see what's going on, and if I have more people coming in, like what I mean by more people, like if I have like at least like 15, 20 people here and it turns into be like an every week thing that I have that many people, this system will also allow me to bring other people in and we can actually have a conversation. Um, Now, the other place I'm in, hey, C. Dean, the other place I'm in, which is going to remain unnamed for right now, the other place I'm in is you could actually, whoever's listening to the chat, you can talk back and forth. Um, I don't think I'm going to be doing that. In fact, I doubt I'm going to be doing that, but who knows? So let's get on with the main topic here, which is yes, it's another book, Mountain Man Skills. So I'm not going to. We're going to read excerpts out of this book because there's some things on here that you might be able to use, but not too many people is going to be packing up a horse. Hey, Pat. Why, thank you. I'm trying it with the light on, but see with the light on, you can see me fine. I'm actually catching a glare from the screen. So, oh well. But as I said, we're going to be doing excerpts from this on basically the skills and what they did with them and how they used them. Yeah, because some of the things I was looking at in here when I was looking at the book yesterday, going through, is I don't think too many people are setting up a pack horse anymore unless you're going hunting in the mountains, which you'd be using a mountain man at that point. And some of the boat stuff is okay. Some of it is like some stuff I would like to make, but this is kind of like you need like a group of people to do it. But you do have this. Something else I've always wanted to try to make. I just don't have the tools to make it, and that is a dugout canoe. Dugout canoe, also called a log canoe. The dugout is strong, serviceable, and durable. Its construction is simple, and it may be quite light. This canoe may be made of pine, butternut, black ash, basswood, or cottonwood. The best are hewn from pine. A log suitable for this should be large, sound, and free of knots. First, it should be cut on two opposite sides of the log to a size corresponding to the depth of the intended vessel. On one side, the cutting should not be in a straight line, but should run out at the surface of the log in order to give it enough of a rise at the bow and stern. This is sometimes performed before the log is even cut or the tree is felled. And what they mean by that is, here's a tree up and down. They'll take one side and they'll cut like a slight bevel in it, like this, because you want your stern a little bit higher, you want your bow a little bit higher. So they'll put that dip in it before they ever cut that, before they even drop the tree. They'll put that little dip in it for the length that they want the canoe when they start to remove material. Where was I? Once the log is on the ground, it is laid with that side up, which is to form the gunnels. Next, the outlines of the sides are marked with a line in chalk or a burnt stick. The general rule for laying out a canoe is to measure it in 3 equal sections. The 2 end sections are for the bow and stern. For a large canoe, the bow should be shaped somewhat more sharply than the stern. Likewise, the width of the vessel at the point where the curves of the bow start, below the gunwale, should be a little greater than at any other point. This difference can be easily managed when finishing off the sides. After general shape is attained, if the canoe is very large, it may be a good idea to attend to this task in the first hewing. The object in giving the dugout canoe a greater width here is to promote an ease of motion in the water, the same principle that governs in the construction of a larger vessel, and is seen in the shape of a duck or goose, applies to the shaping of a larger canoe. A small log canoe, intended to carry no more than 2 persons, may be carved to the same sharpness at both ends, and needs no variation in its width. It may be run either end foremost. Okay. A canoe made in this way, if narrow and very sharp, is easily one of the swiftest and most useful of the mountain man's boats. Both ends of a well-made canoe are curved upward from the middle of the gunwale, and the stern rises a little more from the line of the bottom. When the tree is sound, a canoe may be worked very thin and thus be light and easily carried. Keeping all these points in mind, the canoe is hewn to something resembling its final outer shape. Then the inside is dug out with axes and adze. Finally, it is neatly and smoothly finished. On the outside with axe and draw shave, and on the inside with a round edged adze, or what they call bull adze. Hey, Juanita. So, see, and I never knew that with a dugout canoe. To me, every time I've ever seen a dugout canoe, it just looked heavy as heck. And they're saying, no, you can make this thing light. So that to me, that is very interesting. It is something that I would like to try if I could find a bull adze or or a decent um, dugout adze, if you will. A bull adze is only about this wide, but it's about that deep. It's curved like this, where dugout is a lot more shallow, but it's about that wide. So you're not removing a lot of material deep, you're moving a lot of material wide. So let's see, that's birch bark. Okay, the bull boat. Now the bull boat is very interesting because it's actually made from a buffalo hide. This is what it looks like right there. You got 4 Native Americans and one guy kind of powering it down the stream like a boat motor. Okay, we're going back. That's trippy. Hang on here. Okay. Takes a little bit for the camera to adjust because when I pulled the book away, everything was orange on the screen. One method of ferrying streams is by means of what the mountaineers call a bull boat, the framework of which is made of willows bent into the shape of a short, wide skiff with a flat bottom. Basically, a big flat bottom bowl. Willows grow upon the banks of many streams and can be bent into the desired shape. To make a boat with one hide, a number of straight willows are cut about an inch in diameter. The ends are sharpened and driven into the ground, forming a framework in the shape of half an eggshell, a bowl, cut through its longitudinal axis. Where these rods cross are firmly tied. A stout rod is then heated and bent around the frame in such a position that the edges of the hide, when laid over it and drawn tight, will just reach it. This rod forms the gunnel, which is tied to the ribs. Small rods are then waddled in as to make asymmetrical and to make it as waddled in so as to make it symmetrical and strong. After which the green or soaked hide is pulled over the edges, sewed to the gunnels, and left to dry. The rods are then cut off even with the gunnel, and the boat is ready for use. To build a boat with 2 or more hides, a stout pole of the desired length is placed upon the ground for a keel. The ends turned up and secured by lariat. Willow rods of the required dimensions are then cut, heated, and bent into the proper shape for knees, after which their centers are placed at equal distances upon the keel and firmly tied with cords. The knees are retained in their proper curvature by cords around the end. After a sufficient number of them has been placed upon the keel, 2 poles of suitable dimensions are heated and bent around the ends for a gunnel, and firmly lashed to each knee. Smaller willows are then interwoven so as to model the frame. So what they mean by knees is they'll take a big piece, a big long piece, bend it to the desired shape, whatever that shape may be, and then they'll take those smaller pieces that they call knees, and for what I'm gathering here, because they didn't really say where they put them on the keel, whether they put it on top or below. I'm thinking they put the knees kind of slide it in below, then tie them in place, because those knees then will actually cradle that keel. Because what that keel does, it gives it weight. Now, there is a possibility they could put them on top. And if they did put them on top, even though the tide's going to be stretched below that keel's going to be point down in the water, and that's going to increase the stability to keep it from doing too much of this side to side. Green or silk hides are cut in the proper shape to fit the frame and sewed together with buckskin strings. Then a frame of the boat is placed in the middle, the hide drawn up snug around the sides and secured with rawhide thongs to the gunwale. The boat is then turned bottom side up and left to dry, after which the seams, where they have been sewn, are covered with a mixture of melted tallow, pitch, or resin. The craft is now ready for launching. A boat of this kind is very light and serviceable, but after time becomes waterlogged. It should always be turned upside down to dry whenever it's not in the water. 2 men can easily build a bull boat of 3 hides in 2 days. This will easily carry 10 men. Okay, we're talking about this, the horse and mule packing. Well, here's a couple other things that they used. First one is a travois. And we're going to go over snowshoes here too. So here's both those pictures. There's a picture of snowshoes there. That is a travois. And be looking, or keep an eye out, because I did it once a few years ago. I'm thinking about doing another one. A modern day travois, if you will. One thing you can use as a travois now in the modern day, believe it or not, is an extendable dolly. The dolly that I use for work, I could actually, it's about 4.5 foot high, but I can make it about 6.5 foot high. Carry it, and I can carry a lot of stuff on there. If you put webbing on that or something, you can carry a lot of stuff very easily. But we'll go where my idea came from. The basic travois is of Native American origin. It is essentially an A-frame construction that consists of 2 long wooden staffs, often teepee poles, lashed together at the narrower ends, and braced by lashing 1 or 2 cross pieces midway to the open end. The width of the travois was determined by the length and placement of these bracing cross pieces. This bracing also served as a rudimentary platform upon which the load could be tied. A travois may be pulled, depending on its size, either by dog or horse, or even by man or woman, and was particularly useful in getting loads across broken ground. So we'll take a look at travois here again. That's your travois, and it looks like a Native American parent got all the kids on the travois, taking them someplace, or the mom and a couple kids or what have you, but that's one of the uses of it. Or they would pack up everything from their teepee. They use a couple of teepee poles, probably have another couple poles lashed onto that, or they may have more than one horse that could do it. So they take the teepee poles and make travois out of them, and put all their stuff on it and haul it away to wherever they're moving to. Snowshoes. The first thing is to plan the size, shape, and general character of the shoes. Making the frames or bows are the first steps. The tree from which the frames are to be made should be not more than 8 inches in diameter, and one of 6 inches is better. It should have drooping branches and ought to have 8 or 10 feet of the trunk straight and clean, free of limbs, and absolutely without a twist to the grain. After a tree has been felled, and a section of the proper length cut off, a groove about 1.5 inches deep is carefully cut the entire length along one side. Take care not to strike hard, as that may injure the wood. When the groove is finished, a similar one is cut on the opposite side. The stick should be split with wooden wedges, and if it is properly done, the split will follow the grooves. The best house should then be chosen for the proposed snowshoe, and this should be ripped lengthwise with a saw or split as desired. Each, each of the pieces will make a frame or bow. So here's what they're starting with right here. The stick, that's the frame right there. Here's a board where they're actually working the frames, bending the frames. And it also shows how to lace them up or stitch them up, if you will. One side of the stick is then cut and planed until it is perfectly straight. It's faced at a right angle to the bark side. There should be nothing taken off the bark side, not even the bark, until after the wood is bent into shape for the snowshoe frame. Next, the third side of the stick is marked off with a marking gauge and either cut or sawed to the mark. The fourth side, the inside of the stick, which will be the inside of the finished frame, is then cut down to the proper dimension. But on this side, an even thickness is not maintained. The toe portion being cut thinnest, with the heel ends of the stick coming next. For a snowshoe of average size, say 44 inches in length and 14 inches wide, the stick should measure 8.5 feet in length, 1 inch in width, 7/8 inch thick at the parts which will become the middle of the shoe. 1/2 inch at, okay. Okay. See what they're talking about. You can't really see it in this picture here, but that's A, the next two are B, the next two are C. 1/2 inch at A and about 5/8 of an inch at the ends. Before anything more can be done with the wood, a form or bending the frames must be made. A form for bending the frames must be made. My bad. A convenient form is shown in figure 2. That would be that picture right there. That's a form to make a snowshoe. For steaming the wood properly, it is necessary to have a steaming box, which is merely a long case made of narrow boards open at both ends. The stick is placed in this case and the steam from a boiling tea kettle turned in one end so that the hot steam travels the entire length. The wood should be steamed for about an hour, and then it is ready for bending. Figure 2 shows how the wood is bent and secured on a form. A toe must be formed very carefully, bending only a little at first, then releasing, then bending a little more, and so on until the wood can be easily and safely bent to complete shape and secured by nailing blocks to the form. And that, if you look, we'll go back to figure 2 here, that right there, that's what they're doing. You see, like this piece cross tops on, and they just bent this, and they're getting ready to work this in back to the heel. The wood should be allowed to dry thoroughly on the form before filling, and this will require at least 2 weeks. After the frames are dried, they may be taken from the form. The tail of each fastened and the crossbars fitted into place. The ends may be secured with a wood screw until after the frames have been strung, but the screws should then be removed and the ends tied with rawhide through gimlet holes. The part between being countersunk so that the thongs will be protected from wear. This is shown in figure 4. And this is figure 4, and that is showing the heel. Gotta get a little closer here. There we go. Right there. Now, if you see those little marks in there where the rawhide's kind of stuck in there like that, between each one of those holes, it's actually countersunk, so the rawhide can actually sink into the wood. And that keeps that rawhide protected, because as you're going through the snow, anything that comes up is going to go brush right down the wood, and go right over top of that rawhide, and the rawhide's not going to get touched. The crossbars are pieces of flat, strong wood, about 1 1/4 inches wide and nearly a ½ inch thick, with rounded edges. These should be placed about 16 or 17 inches apart, measuring from center to center, and so placed that when the frame is suspended on the hands midway between these two sticks, the tail will outweigh the toe by just a few ounces. These crossbars should be fairly carefully mortised into the frame, as shown in the small diagram in the center of figure 3. Okay, and there's 3 there showing the crossbars. This light line going up and down here, and this light line going up and down here. That's your crossbars for your snowshoe. Exactly, C-Dean. Exactly. Now, where was I? Sorry, my dog's groaning at me right now. And both sides of the frame, from D to E, also from F to G, which those 2 lines again that I was talking about. Gimlet holes are bored through the bowels from the outside to inside, at intervals of 2 inches or a little more. The holes being in pairs obliquely placed and countersunk between. 3 holes are also bored through each crossbar as shown. And that would be, get a little closer here, these 3 holes that you see, or these little diagonal lines you see, that's what they're talking about. The frames are now ready for filling. Regarding material for filling, for ordinary use, there's nothing equal to cowhide, a fairly heavy skin. A whole hide will fill several pairs of shoes. The portion along the back is best, and this should be used for filling the middle section. The lighter parts from the edges of the skin will do for stringing the heels and toes. All strands should be cut lengthwise of the skin and full length. The width depending on the thickness of the skin. It is well to cut several trial widths so that the proper weight of strand may be determined. For a coarse web shoe, the thongs, after being stretched and dried, should be about 5/16 of an inch wide for the middle portion of the shoe. For the ends, an 1/8 inch is sufficiently heavy. These strands of hide should be all soaked and stretched thoroughly, allowed to dry while stretched, and then soaked again just before using and strung into the frames while wet. And that's what they're talking about right there. The ends are filled first. A strand of the water-soaked rawhide is stretched tightly around the inside of the toe portion through the little gimlet holes as shown in figure 5. Yeah, that's figure 5 right there. And this is what they're talking about right here. There goes wrap rawhide around the very front of that. Starting and finishing out start starting and finishing at one of the holes in the forward crossbar. This song is called the lanyard, and its purpose is to hold the filling, which is woven into the toe. A small a small needle of very hard wood or bone is used for filling the ends. Starting in the lower left hand corner, it goes up to the part marked 1, passes around the lanyard, twists back around itself about an inch, and then goes down to 2. There, pass around the lanyard again, twisting around itself, and then around the lanyard at 3. A single twist, and then across the 4, where it again runs around the lanyard and twists down, yada yada yada. We keep on going until we get down to 6. From there, the strand loops and twists the same as in the first round, except that at the lower corners, it loops back around the first round and then twists around itself, then around the lanyard, and on the same as before. This looping back of every second round is continued until the filling extends across the entire forward part of the toe. Then it is discontinued, and each round is made like the first. This looping back throws the filling alternately from side to side. The filling must be stretched. The filling must be stretched in very tightly and must not be allowed to slip. When one strand is used up, another is joined on in the manner shown. And it doesn't really show. It's not the greatest picture to share. Let's put it that way. See that every round crosses the others in the proper way, and all the twists are made alike. The weave will finish at the center of the crossbar. But you guys probably didn't think there's that much in the building snowshoes, huh? There's a ton more to this than what I thought. And basically, they kind of do the same thing. We'll just finish this off here real quick because it's basically I'm reading the same thing over and over again. But they kind of do the same thing in reverse for the heel section. But what they do is they start at the crossbar and work down to the heel. Whereas when they did the toe, I started the toe and worked to that crossbar. Then after I work to the heel, they kind of do your webbing in between the crossbars where your feet go. But that is actually quite ingenious, to be honest with you. But when you're done, you end up with something like that. Okay, the Indian toboggan. And they don't really show a good picture of it here at all. They show you like half of it in this picture here. That's what the guy's pulling. For winter travel over deep snow, there's no better sled in the world than the Indian toboggan. For the trapper during winter, it is often indispensable, and without it, the native hunters of the north would find great difficulty in getting their furs to market. Um, that's one thing they didn't go over, but I think the it could be the powdery stuff because the powdery stuff, as light and powdery as it is, it doesn't compact very much. Whereas your heavier snow, like your snowman snow, you'll still stay on top of it, but I think it'd still sink into it a little bit. But it should be good for all snow up to a point. Now, when it starts getting like here around Pennsylvania, you wouldn't really have that much snowshoe weather, so to speak, because you'd have that powdery or that colder snowman snow or that packable snow for a certain time period. And after that, once it starts getting wet, that's when you start sinking into it. And I don't care what you got. If unless it's completely filled in, you're sinking into that stuff whether you want to or not. I know. We tried all kinds of silly things. I know. How I'm still alive, I have no clue, but we know now. Although the winter season, all through the winter season, the various trading posts were visited by the trappers, many of whom had traveled hundreds of miles on their snowshoes with their heavily laden toboggans. Arriving at their market, they sold or traded their stock of furs, and likewise disposed of their toboggans, reserving only their snowshoes to aid them in their long tramp homewards. And it's just what you think it is. There's your Indian toboggan right there. The first need is a board about 8 feet in length and 16 or more inches in width. Oak is the best wood for the purpose, although hickory, basswood, or ash will do excellently. It should be planed or sawed to a thickness of about a third of an inch and should be free of knots. If a single board of the required width is not easily found, two boards may be used and secured side by side by 3 cleats. And each one of these little crossbars here, as you see going across it, that's a cleat. Because they're kind of putting the pieces side by side instead of lengthwise, they're putting them widthwise. Next, 7 or 8 wooden cross pieces. Oh, okay, my bad. I guess the cleat is the ones that go long ways. That's me. Sorry about that. Next, 7 or 8 wooden cross pieces of a length equivalent to the width of the board are needed. 4 old broomsticks cut into required lengths. Ladies, hide your broomsticks if your husband wants to try this. And if these are not available, other sticks of similar dimensions should be used. The 2 side pieces are needed next. These should be about 5 feet in length and of a thickness exactly similar to the cross pieces. Next, procure a few pairs of leather shoestrings or some strips of tough calfskin. With these collected, we now begin the work of putting the parts together. Begin by laying the cross pieces at equal distances along the board. Across these and near their ends, lay the 2 side pieces as seen in the illustration. Using a drill, bore 4 holes through the board beneath the end of each cross piece and also directly under the side piece. It's a good idea to mark the various points for the holes with a pencil, after which the sticks can be removed and the work much more easily performed. The 4 holes should be about an inch apart or so disposed as to mark the 4 corners of a square inch. Okay. It is also necessary to make other holes along the length of the cross pieces, as seen in the illustration. The line on these can also be marked with the pencil across the board and the holes made afterwards. These should also be an inch apart and only 2 in number at each point, 1 on each side of the stick. When all the holes are completed, turn the board over in order to complete preparations on the other side. The object of these various holes is for the passage of the leather shoestrings we will use to secure the cross pieces firmly to the board. In order to prevent these loops from wearing off on the other side, make small Here we go. We're going to countersink or make a groove so your string can go up in the groove. Make small grooves on the underside connecting the holes. This allows the leather string to sink into the wood, where it will be protected from injury. A narrow chisel is the best tool for this purpose. When the underside is finished, the board may be turned over and the cross pieces and sides again arranged in place as described above. Secure the pieces to the board by load strings to the various holes, always knotting on the upper surface and taking care that the knots are firmly tied. The ends of all the cross pieces will require a double cross stitch through the 4 holes beneath in order to secure the side pieces as well. This is plainly shown in a small diagram. A. The front of each side piece underneath should now be sharpened to the point to allow for a bend at the front of the toboggan. Actually, there's only one figure here, and I keep on. You've already seen it. So the cross piece at the front end should be secured to the underside of the board, so as it bends over, it will appear on the upper edge, as in the illustration. So the last cross piece is actually going across here. So they said put it on the underside of the board, so as you bend the board over, it's like this, and as you bend the board over, it's going to be on the top. The purpose of the crossbars is when you put stuff on it, because the crossbars are actually elevated off the. Well, the crossbars go across, and you have that other piece that goes across, goes length of it. You could tie things on. That's why they did it like that. It's basically to use something newer. It's like, remember the old roof racks on the cars? They had like a bar that came up and a bar that went across, but you put stuff on the roof rack and you kind of tied it in place. Same principle. There you go. The board should then be bent with a graceful curve and thus held in position by a rope or strip of leather at each extremity at each extremity of the end cross piece and attached to the ends of the third cross piece. So basically, what they did is here's your bend here, there's your top piece, and it came down to this first cross piece that's on the ground, and that's where they tied it off so they could keep that bend in there. If the bending is difficult and there's a danger of breaking the board, an application of boiling water will render it pliable. The drawstrings are finally attached to the ends of the second cross piece, and the toboggan is complete. It now be laden with 200 or 300 pounds of merchandise and will be found to draw over the surface of the snow with perfect ease. For coasting over the crust, there's nothing like it. Now, this is something, if you're into bushcraft, here's something that may interest you. Lean-to tents and teepees. Lean-tos were in general use among the old veteran trappers of all countries, and there is a certain charm in a shelter so quickly constructed from the rude materials of the woods, which portable tents do not possess. Drive 2 sets of forked sticks into the ground. Lay cross pieces into the 2 sets of forks. Roof it by laying smaller sticks across the cross pieces and also vertically to form a back wall. Tents of several kinds. Tents are of several kinds. Most tent is made of 2 prop poles and a ridge pole. It is generally closed on one end and buttoned up at the other. The sides are perpendicular for 2 or 3 feet before the slope commences, and the stay ropes are fastened to the eaves. The fly tent is generally a large square piece of canvas with ropes extending from opposite sides. With ropes from opposite sides. Sorry, I'm having a bad reading day, as you can tell. It's thrown over a ridgepole or over a rope extending between two trees. The sides are held the sides are held to the proper slope by tightening and pegging the side ropes to the ground. Fly tents are also made with ends which can be lowered, and the whole tent may be pegged close to the ground. The shanty tent consists of two sets of prop poles with cross pieces, one set of prop poles being roughly twice the height of the other, but conforming to the same cut of the canvas. So this is your shanty tent here. This would be what they call your shelter tent. The shelter tent, when erected, generally resembles the shanty tent. It consists of a strip of canvas having each end cut off to a point. The tent is pitched over three slanting poles, and the ends are brought down and securely pegged. Another common tent may be described as a simple or teepee tent. It is much like the teepee of the Plains Indians. They're usually much smaller and squatter. It usually consisted of 4 or 5 uprights lashed together at the top and covered with a wrapping of canvas or oil cotton cloth. That'd be this little deal right here. Now, the Plains Indians teepees were not so squat, about the same circumference, but they were much taller, so it gave them a much sleeker design than this one, which is shorter. And since it's shorter and the same circumference, it's more squat or looks wider than what it actually is. Another simple shelter is the lean-to tent. Should a storm arise all of a sudden, as so often happens in the mountains, a quick emergency shelter was often improvised by chopping a tree limb most of the way through, bending it to the ground, and hauling out a refuge among the leaves, which is this little storm shelter right here. What time is it? Okay, it's 8:48. Oh, we'll do this because in today's day and age, this may actually come in handy. Caches. And just different forms of caches, whether it's for food, supplies, money, what have you. It often happened that trappers and traders were compelled, for want of transportation, to hide a portion of their pelts, stores, equipment, or other baggage. Such contingencies have given rise to a method of secreting articles called by the old French Canadian voyagers caching. Underground caches. The proper place for setting an underground cache is in loose sandy soils, where the earth is dry and easily excavated. Near the bank of a river is the most convenient for this purpose, as the earth taken out can be thrown into the water, leaving no trace behind. When the spot has been chosen, the turf is carefully cut and laid aside, after which a hole is dug the shape of an egg, big enough to contain the articles to be secreted. The earth, as it is taken out, is thrown upon a cloth or blanket and carried to a stream or ravine where it can be disposed of, being careful not to scatter any upon the ground near the cache. The hole is then lined with bushes or dry grass. The article is placed within, covered with grass, the hole filled up with earth, and the saw is carefully placed back in their original position. And that is the important part of it there is that sod that they took out. They're very careful with that because they don't want that, what they cut out to die, because that would be a telltale marker there's something underneath there. That is the main focus of this is if they keep that sod looking good and they put it back in and they kind of use their hand and go around the circumference of that to kind of get rid of that where they cut it out, get rid of that edge where they cut it out and let it kind of grow back up again, it'll completely conceal itself. The only person who's going to know it's there is the person who put it there in the first place. Another plan for making a cache is to dig a hole inside a tent and occupy the tent for some days after the goods are deposited. This effaces the marks of the excavation. See, that's another keen trick because a lot of these tents didn't have a floor in them. They were on the ground. So you go in your tent, you close the tent up, you dig the hole, you put your stuff in it, you do your little bush thing, put the dirt back in the hole, jump up and down on it a couple times, pack it down, and then you keep your tent over top of it for about another month or at least a couple weeks. Because you walk around in there, it's going to completely displace all that stuff. It's going to find its own level, and then when you pull your tent up, you know the stuff's there, and all the grass and everything around it is dead. But someone's going to look at that and say, "Well, there's a tent. There's nothing there," because all the marks of you digging you pretty much erased all of that. The mountain traders were formerly in the habit of building fires over their caches. That's another method too. Another method of caching is to place your articles in the top of an evergreen tree, such as the pine, hemlock, or spruce. The thick boughs are so arranged around the packages that they cannot be seen from beneath. Lash them to a limb, and this will prevent them from being blown out by the wind. This will only work for articles that will not become injured by the weather. And to me, I would be a little leery of that myself. This book was written by Stephen Brennan, and it's called Mountain Man Skills. Caves or holes in a rock that are protected from rains are also secure deposits for caching goods. But in every case, care should be taken to obliterate all tracks or other indications of men having been near them. These caches will be more secure when made at some distance from roads or trail and in places where others would not be likely to pass. To find a cache, a compass bearing in the distance from the center of it to some prominent object, such as a mound, rock, or tree, should be carefully determined and recorded, so that anyone on returning to the spot will have no difficulty in ascertaining its position. If you have no compass, get a bearing by aligning two prominent objects. So, what they mean by aligning two prominent objects if you don't have a compass, you're on one object and you want to go toward another object. Either it's going to be at that object. Let's say you're on one mound and you want to go to another mound. That's maybe you can see 2 miles off in the distance, but you only want to go a mile and a half. But you're gonna be able to see that second mound, the peak of that second mound during your whole travel. That'd be one way of doing it. Let's see what else we got here. Because I'll probably go over a little bit more of this next week. Just trying to find something since we don't have that much time left here. Trapping. Tomahawks and hatchets. The following are examples of various types and styles of hatchets and tomahawks familiar to the trappers and traders of the beaver country. And that would be everything. We'll start at the top there, and those ones down there. And figure A shows William Clark's drawing of the tomahawk designed by the Mandans. Okay. Kind of going through some of the tools but I think what we're going to do here is I think I'm going to, because everything else is going to take me over my 1 hour there, and there's a couple other things I need to get done tonight. So, yeah, I actually have a tomahawk. I don't have access to it right now, but I have a tomahawk. It's a throwing tomahawk. It has no what they call a hammer pole on it. It's just a wrap and the blade part itself. There's nothing on the backside you can use as a hammer. But I kind of did a makeshift handle for it. I didn't do a quote unquote proper handle that's friction fit. I did one out of a piece of oak dowel that is wedge fit. But if I wanted to go do what they call a friction fit, because those tomahawks, where the handle goes in, it's not straight up and down. It's actually splayed out like this. Not quite that much. That's an exaggeration, but it's splayed out. So when you make your handle, it's thinner at the bottom and it gets thicker as it goes toward the top. What you do is you put your handle on, and how you secure it is you beat it. Literally, you beat it upside down on a log or something, because you're still gonna have about that much of that handle sticking up past that head. But you beat it, and what it does, it kind of drives it on, and you got that friction fit. And if you made your handle right, it's not going to come back off until you turn it back over and you take the butt end and you beat it on your anvil stump or whatever, and that'll loosen the head, and the head will come back down. You can take the head back off. And the reason they did that is so you could easily make a handle out in the bush if you break your handle. You cut the appropriate size piece of hickory. You carve the appropriate actually the handle that's on the tomahawk, the ones, not the handle I made, because the handle I made, actually the piece of oak dowel did split a little bit. But the ones that I'm talking about is you don't nail anything into the top of it. It's a solid piece of wood that, oh, I know what you're talking about. Now you say that. You mean from when you try to seat the head? What keeps the wood from splitting is what keeps wood from splitting is, instead of having it straight up and down at the top, where you're kind of, yes, it does. But when you go to seat the head, if you leave the handle square up there, you do what's called bullnosing. You know, bullnose that thing the whole way around, and that'll actually keep that from splitting. Because instead of the force being transferred to those corners, where the force is either going to go this way or it's go this way, that bullnose actually spreads it out so it goes the whole way around. Kind of a weird explanation, and it still kind of boggles my mind how it works, but it does work, because what that bullnose does, instead of just that point getting all that, just instead of that point that goes the whole way around it, taking all that force now gets spread throughout the whole piece. And that's what actually keeps it from splitting, and actually helps the head drive down where it should be. But Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, it is. It is very cool. It's surprising how simple, but yet extremely efficient a lot of this old technology was. Because everybody thinks that the new technology is always going to be a more efficient technology, which a lot of times is not exactly the case. The old technology, like they're using then, was a lot more efficient, easier to deal with, easier to reproduce on your own. So, I mean, as I said, I find that absolutely, utterly fascinating. Where's my notes at here? Exactly. The KISS principle, and I was always told KISS actually means keep it simple, stupid. And I'm not the only person that says, I know a lot of people who say that, but it is a very true statement. But if that's it, then I think I'm going to call this one, call it the night. So I thank you ladies for coming, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. And heck, everybody here, I'll probably see you tomorrow night anyway over in the other place. So I'll talk to y'all later. Thank you very much. I love y'all. Night, everybody.